the inside.
For clothes that Tristan.
Here at Goddard Park at the Cool Cat Karaoke. Missy's funky white sister is in the park! Is it worth it? Let me work it. I put my thing down, flip it, and reverse it. He's chirping and if it's wind yip. He's chirping and if it's wind yip. If you got a big let me search you. Find out how hard I gotta work you. He's chirping and if it's wind yip. He's chirping and if it's wind yip. I like to get to know you so I can show ya. Put the pussy on ya like I told ya. Give me all your numbers so I can phone ya. Your girl acts stinks then call me over.
I just added an accidental remix in at the end.
Nice.
That's a way to start a morning.
Yeah, got me hyped. Good stuff.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone to Money Me, the series that's going to turn your money woes into money woes.
Give me money. Money me. Money now. Me a money needing a lot now.
I'm Hein, here always with my partner in crime, Matt, from Huck Finch Design Studios. We're excited to have the one and only Peter Kang. First time exclusive, not a second time in the park, from Barrel Holdings to put things down, flip it, and reverse it. But before we jump into things, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on content just like this. So that you can learn to price your projects like a boss instead of the usual guess the number, jelly beans in the jar approach. Because subscribing to the show is totally worth it.
And it's free. So on a pricing episode, I feel like just toss that in there. Something free that you can do just to be nice to us. But anyway, Peter, thanks for being on the show. First questions for you. Have you ever seen that classic cold open video before? Usually I don't know what Hein chooses, and I didn't know this one. So
no, I've not seen that before. So.
Yeah, I've seen that one out there. It's always the fact that she seems to be holding some sort of a horn. I'm just like, I don't get that part. And that's the best part for me, is just like, I need a behind the scenes of like, where'd that come from? Did she kill an animal at some point before that? But yeah, that always throws me off there.
She never addresses it either, so like we'll never know why she had that or what that is.
Which is to me genius. Like if you see it once, it's like funny that she's like doing a Missy Elliott cover. If you see it like the second time, you're like, why is she holding that? This is slightly disturbing. But yeah. Anyway, just start with the standard kind of background. You have a interesting background, as I think a lot of us creatives tend to, but kind of like have the holding company approach to it, which I think is really interesting. We can talk about a little bit, but yeah, just kind of the standard bio, like your entry into this creative world, and anything else you want to share that you think makes sense.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I got started with like making websites pretty early. This was like, I say mid 90s. Was like making websites. This is like AOL days too. So, this is super long time ago. But yeah, got really into, just like making websites for friends, for myself, at a little teen magazine that I used to run. And so, yeah, and that, when I got to college, it kind of translated into like, doing it for different clubs that I was part of, but also, needed to make some money. So got some freelance gigs. And, it was in college I found, I was able to link up with my co-founder, Sebuk, and the two of us, we were just making websites and, found kind of our respective roles. So I became more of like the designer, kind of project manager, and he became the dev guy doing a lot of the tech. And so the two of us, kind of became very complementary to each other. And then, we just really enjoyed working together, making stuff, whether it was for the clubs that we belong to or for clients. And yeah, after, I graduated from Columbia back in '05, and then I went to work in finance for a year at Lehman Brothers. And, I was, I'm a couple years older than Siwuk, so he was still in school. Even through my banking days, I would go, meet up with him, almost every Friday, and we'd like make websites together for clients on the side. So I kind of had this plan of like, hey, I'm going to do banking for maybe like a year, and then see where it goes. Probably want to do my own thing. And really the web piece was what I was really excited for, because there's a lot of exciting things happening there. A lot of kind of yeah, it's a lot of movement. And then this was, not too long after the dot-com bubble. So like in this rise of Web 2.0, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but that was coming into view. And so it was really cool time. And so, I, when I got my bonus from my Lehman job, I quit right away the next Monday, and then started this path down Barrel. So that was in 2006. And so, yeah, it's come up by 18 years this year.
Congrats.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, the first, I say like 5 years were just rough and tumble, glorified freelancer life. Basically, it's just two of us jamming on sites, and it was good. Like we learned a lot, we did a lot of work, and then we had a few, let's say, like lucky breaks that kind of gave us some larger projects than we were used to, and that gave us the opportunity to start hiring some folks, and really a crash course in like how to manage people. I mean, we failed horribly for first probably like 7 years of that, if not longer. But it was just like constant like learning of like, okay, how do you get people, the right kind of people? How do you get them to do the work in the right way? And how do we continue to grow? And so that's been kind of the journey since. And yeah, about 7-8 years ago, we decided to really double down on the e-commerce side for Barrel. So we focused our work on Shopify, and yeah, we've been working with a lot of brands to help them, first of all, navigate the Shopify ecosystem, because there's all these apps and kind of different ways that you can get the most out of the Shopify platform. So and also optimize the site on Shopify itself. So doing a lot of those kinds of activities for our clients. And then, it was about probably 15 years into the business, so 2021, where, there was one aspect of Barrel that was kind of, I thought, slowing us down, which was we had accumulated a portfolio of legacy clients, like clients that just had been with us for a long time. So, 5, 7, 8 years. And these were great clients, but their needs were different than what we were kind of designed to work on. So this would be like, hey, can you update my plugin on WordPress? Hey, content updates last minute for this nonprofit site. And so we and we're always happy to help, but like just resourcing for those things and kind of making sure our team can also focus on the active big projects became really challenging. And so we made the move to kind of figure out what all those clients kind of that fell into this kind of support and maintenance category were, the smaller side of things. And then we spun it out as a different company. And one of our employees at the time, Jason Fan, he was really eager to kind of, he was all big entrepreneur spirit, and he agreed to kind of take it on as a business partner with us, and that portfolio of business became Vaulted Oak, and that was our kind of first business outside of Barrel that we were able to get going. And he's done a marvelous job, like growing that initial basket of business into something much larger. And then that just kind of gave us this confidence of like, hey, maybe there's an opportunity to create more businesses that aren't specifically focused on what we're trying to do with Barrel on Shopify. And so just not too long after that, we launched BX Studio, because and this is actually kind of related to what you guys do. So, Barrel had been getting a lot of Webflow requests. We were early adopters to Webflow, and so we were getting a lot of inbound leads. And also, like some of these sites that we used to traditionally do on WordPress, we were like, okay, maybe Webflow is the better fit for this. And so, we were doing it, but like, our designers were kind of like, like it's cool to build on Webflow, but we don't want to be the ones like taking it all the way home and like, trying to maintain that for clients. And so, we really saw a need for like a team that's like super hyper focused on Webflow and kind of, like really comfortable with all the aspects of it. So we teamed up with a co-founder, this guy Jacob, who is coming from another small agency, and yeah, like he has been amazing, just like scaling this from zero to just a business that's kind of I think now a known entity in that Webflow agency space, and just doing a lot of amazing work with many cool brands, and so very happy how that's turned out in just 2 short years, and so definitely also very promising trajectory as well. So I thought that worked out well, and then last year, just because I couldn't help myself, decided to kind of spin up one more. And this was Bolster, our brand design agency. So it's, not too, I guess, because I think Bill Kenny has Odie that kind of spun off of Focus Lab, right? Yeah, we saw kind of need for like that lower end of the market for brand design services, and kind of cutting out a lot of the initial work of you know the brand strategy, messaging, all the kind of the fancy stuff that happens in the beginning of these projects. We thought, hey, just some people just would be perfectly happy just going straight to design, give them something pretty, and they can use it for their sales and marketing. So that was kind of the thesis for Bolster, and yeah, and we could dive more into that because there's some interesting pricing things we're doing with Bolster that we could talk about. But yeah, that's essentially the holdco and the portfolio at large.
That's awesome. Yeah, this is so cool. Like the way that your journey started and how like you approach like all these different like needs like in a way that it's like with the right people, but in a way didn't dilute what you are doing with Barrel. It only added to it. I could totally see that this could have easily gone the other way, where like now if you just added all this under Barrel and it just became like everyone was like, so what do you guys do exactly? You're like, well, everything. We do it all. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just gonna say I think it's something we've thought about too. Is trying to be known for being really really good at one particular thing in one particular area, which you just kind of laid out for each of those. And I think high into your point is like I think the old way of doing that would have been to just build a single monster agency and be like, we kind of know enough about this. Maybe we hire, like department heads or something like that. But I think like the holding company and like thinking about them as individual brands with individual capabilities is really cool and interesting. And I think maybe we just live in a time now where that's like a little more possible potentially than that used to be. But I just think that's a really cool way to do it and allow people to find the part of what you do way up here at this level, in the kind of meet them where they are kind of way, and letting people like do the part they're really good at. So I think that's really cool, very interesting kind of concept.
Yeah. So since the show is about pricing and about money, like we'd love to kind of learn a little bit. I know obviously like touching on all these different things is probably going to be maybe a lot, but where you maybe is there like kind of a central kind of like philosophy around how you guys go about charging for projects? Obviously like the branding one is a little bit different than websites, but yeah, just kind of like wanted to learn more about that.
Yeah. I mean, one thing we often think about, there's like two aspects of pricing that always come to mind. So one is, like the prospect themselves, like the potential client that you have in front, like what are they, willing or able to pay? So that's always an important signal because, like doesn't matter what your price is, if it's way above what, they're able to pay, then that's, that's no go. So there, and we call this like, you got to price the client, kind of figure out what what their kind of range is, and then the other side is like, what's kind of the cost structure of like what you can deliver, and make a decent margin, a target margin that you might have, and so kind of taking those two things into consideration, and then from there, like on each deal, or depending on where what you're going to do to kind of either put yourself in a better position to win, or maybe it's a way to kind of you know get something in the door. You might make certain kinds of kind of decisions on either side. So that's typically how I look at it. And I think whether I'll give you a good example, like for Barrel, like there's definitely been instances where we'll look at a client, and they'll come with us, and we'll get some budget signals, and you can just tell, like, okay, they're super early, they're not going to have the capital to kind of invest in a major web project, but you go, maybe there's another reason for the value. Like, look, they actually have a very recognizable brand, and like there's some value in saying, hey, like we work with these guys to do XYZ, and there's that, and then there's also some growth potential. Although, like, I'm like super skeptical about like future work, more and more. You just gotta like it's not a given. But what I would but just having, let's say this is for the logo, right? Like for the client's logo that you're doing it for, and you can be creative. So let's say just as a example numbers here, like let's say you usually charge, let's say, like 50 to 100K for projects, right? Whatever, for like a web project, but then this client has like 15 to 20K, right? So but then it's like a logo that you covet. What are some ways to make it work? If you're super like hardcore about it, you go, hey, look, our minimums are 50. You can get at, you could get out of our face or whatever, right? You say it nicely, but I think if you really want to make it work, you go, okay, hey team, let's figure out, like, is there a process through which you can still deliver something of quality, but maybe it's constrained in certain ways, and we can do it in a shorter period of time, or whatever it might be, to kind of get that cost down, so that it's actually you know and one thing you don't want to do is, you don't want to, like, one thing we try to avoid is, like, you know absolutely, is you don't want to do the exact same thing for less. Like, you want to you know yeah, you want to adjust the type of work that you're doing to, at least have some margin, or at the least kind of make it a break even proposition. And so you might come up with a creative approach, and then you go to the client, and you go, hey, look, this is actually below what we typically charge for these projects. However, we've found some creative ways to work with you, and we think we could get you something of quality, and this is how we would get it done. Sometimes the client's like, no, like, I want the full thing, and you either do it for the budget I have, or you don't. So and at that point, hey, look, it's fine. Like, it's a, you should make a prudent decision, business decision, and walk away from that. But other times, like, clients are like, cool, like, appreciate you, being creative and willing to work with us, and let's do it this way. And so, yeah, that's kind of been a strategy that's worked for us, in terms of like thinking about pricing. And then at the other end of the spectrum too, like, a client might not be price sensitive. So, in those cases, you go, okay, like, you might try to get some signals on, like, hey, like, what's the budget? And sometimes, you might want to be opportunistic and throw a much larger number, like, just than your typical range, just to see how they like anchor to that. And then, if they don't flinch, then like, you can go higher on the budget. And so, yeah, there's some of that stuff too. That's why it's like, it's very important for us to kind of think about the client, and kind of think about pricing from their perspective first.
Yeah, I love that there is kind of a dance to it, and I think that's the part that you are speaking to, that makes this whole world a little wishy-washy. And like, it's not in a bad way. I thought some of the reasons that you put out there are like very tangible reasons why you would do something one way or another. Something you mentioned that was really interesting to me, maybe we could talk a little bit more about, was going back to the team and being creative about how you can return something of quality or value back to them. Is that usually based on like, hey, we had a call, these are the things they said they really wanted, obviously all of this would be 50K or whatever, like your normal project minimum is or whatever it might be, but could we do just the logo and color, just to pick out two random things? Like, could we do this? Like, could you talk a little bit more about maybe what that general conversation looks like, even with your team? Like, what are some of the levers you normally or generally are looking to pull in that?
Yeah. I mean, it ends up being a bit more structured because, we have like so we do a lot of spreadsheeting for our projects when we're scoping and things. And, so we have what we call like our staffing and pricing model. And so what we'll do is, okay, like the, like you plug in the budget and then you go and then you end up working backwards and you kind of go, okay, like what's our desired margin on this project? And, on a project, we try to at least get a minimum of 40% gross margin. Higher is better, but like that's kind of the bar. And so if we're thinking along those lines, you go, okay, 20K, like, all right, like how do you, like, cost has to be of a certain level. And so you're looking at it already, like, from right off the bat, like, okay, you can't have an 8-person team on this, like, because that's literally like a few meetings and you've blown like, half the budget. So like you go, okay, this is gotta be a much smaller team. And so you go, okay, who's absolutely needed to get this going? And then you might go, the duration of the project also has to be different. So you can't carry, someone at 50, 100% allocation across 2 months on a smaller budget project. You literally got to get it done in a couple of weeks. So you go, okay, so there's that constraint. And now within that, you go, what are the actual activities then? So we kind of, we're able to put these kind of guardrails in place just using the model. And then off of that, we're then able to go to the team and be like, hey, look, these are the constraints that we have to work with in terms of timeline and staffing. Now, like, let's get more specific into like what are we actually going to be able to build for them. And remember, this is what they said they wanted, and this is what we're going to come back with, like, or help us kind of figure out what we're going to come back with. And then it's got to be some kind of compromise in between. And so that's how we typically go about with that. And yeah, it's the same combo whether it's a big project or a small project. So like, it's always kind of the function of, yeah, the team, the duration, and then the activities.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome that there's that structure to it, and like having these guardrails there as like I like the way that you broke it down to like basically that project management triangle of like staff, your resources, the time, what can you do with that? But the way that you did it allowed it to make it feel more structured and allow then for you to actually create that constraint in a I'll call it a professional way. But yeah, so like, I guess like the follow up question there. I first of all, I love, thank you for sharing the percentage that you guys kind of approach with like the margin. That's kind of like where we try to set ours as well. So it's kind of cool to hear that somebody else is kind of around there as well with us. So can you maybe just talk a little bit about how like these kind of constraints and guardrail kind of like came about for you as you started pricing projects? Like, was it something that evolved over time? Was this kind of something like you very much were very clear from the get go that like this is how you wanted to approach it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, just, was it having done like hundreds of projects, and over time you kind of get to see, I mean, it's like the rhythms of the business, and you go like how do these things, make or lose money, right? And I think, just being on the losing end for a long time across many projects, you find out quickly, look, number one killer of margins is project delays. When projects kind of go along like beyond their kind of expected launch date, delivery date, whatever, or completion date, it causes this kind of inability for you to staff folks on the next project, it just kind of drags down. Even if, like, let's say, oh, you're waiting for someone to do something, to do whatever, like that, it's still something that you might need to keep someone on your team involved until it gets done. So like there's a drag on the business because of that. But the worst thing is, like, yeah, you had this launch date for, let's say, March, and then all of a sudden you're still in June and working on the project. Like, that's killer. You're losing money. And so and especially if you have, depending on how you've like set up the cost structure too, like if it's not, if you don't have like a fixed scope deal with your subcontractors, then you're just paying on a monthly basis or weekly basis, or whatever, and that's, or hourly basis, and that's brutal. If you have full-time employees on stuff that are working beyond their allocated times, like that's just coming out of your pocket. And so I think those things inform, like, okay, like it's very simple when it comes to these types of projects. You either kind of like the timing has to make sense. And I'm talking mainly to the fixed fee type of pricing. Obviously, like, if you can get people on an hourly model, or like a bucket of hours where you're kind of burning down against it or something, it's a different, there, like the risk is less about going over, but then the risk is like kind of showing value for the hours that you've used, because like the clients are, if you're gonna get into situations where the client be like, well, why did it take that long? Or they might they'll want more visibility into how those hours are spent, and if they feel like they're getting adequate value from them. So different set of challenges, but yeah, like a lot of the projects that we do are fixed fee. So yeah, it's all about avoiding the delays.
Yeah, like real quick, like mechanical question on that is, like, how do you typically, like, when do you charge? Do you break it up monthly? Do you charge, like 50% up front? There's all sorts of ways that people have been successful and unsuccessful in these models. Just curious how that typically works for you.
Yeah. I mean, we typically like to, and this is just, over time, we just thought it was kind of cleaner for accounting purposes too. Like we kind of like to break it up into payment terms that kind of match what we think the velocity of the project is going to be, from a monthly perspective. So let's say, 100K project, we think it's a 4-month project, then we'll probably break it up into 25K, monthly chunks. And so, we'll charge 25 at the front, and then like month 2 will, and so it might be a monthly thing. Some clients are very, insistent on like milestone based, payment terms, and so yeah, we'll work with them on that, and like then the ownership's on us to make sure like we're kind of trying to move as closely to that as possible. But yeah, like I said, there's always risks to kind of doing that as well. I mean, look, there's been times where we've had let's say a 4-month payment schedule, so you get paid out on the full project, but then it's like 2-3 months beyond it, and you're just working for nothing, basically.
yeah. It feels really good when you get that check, right? And then it's like,
Yeah.
oh shit. Yeah.
But it's like, hey, we're still doing work, and it's like, hey, we've already been paid, and it's like now it's just coming out of the profit margins, and then eventually out of your pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go back to something a word that you use quite a bit, we're always talking about pricing. The other side of it is, you want to provide value and quality work and all these things. But how do you have any ways that you've found over the years that are, not to overuse the word valuable in explaining value to clients or prospects, like more effective, like that they grab onto over and over? I think that can be hard, especially freelancers or smaller agencies where maybe they're trying to get to that point, like you mentioned in your journey, where like you kind of level up and you're like, okay, we got projects that maybe feel larger than we've done before. We want to get more of those. This feels like the right area. Any sort of lessons learned over the years in terms of like, oh, clients like seem to really resonate when we show them this, like this is the stuff that they grab onto? I know that's always a big question, right? It's like some people really appreciate great design just because that's their personality or that's the type of company it is. Some don't care about that at all. Some want a well-developed site, all those things. So yeah, anything that stands out to you over the years?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, one thing, I mean, it's exactly what you said though. It is like yeah, you can't just generalize across clients on what they value. So it is kind of yeah, in many ways as part of whether it's your during the you know kind of the business development conversations, the sales conversations you're having, or even as you're working with a client to really dig in and kind of understand what that particular client values. And so, I mean, I was just talking to a client, a client from a while back, and we were talking about like reconnecting and doing work again after like 5, 6 years, and like the way this client was talking about what he valued from us was, hey, like love the way you guys, like never went, like never like did the overage charge thing to me. Like you guys said, hey, like it's gonna take this much, it's gonna cost this much, and like that's what you charged. And I was like, and to me, like I was like, yeah, that's like to me that's like a standard thing. But he's like, no, 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 like my other, this other team that I was working with, they like went over budget by 30, 40% every time, and so I could never, have a clear idea of like what to budget for them, and so that was really frustrating. So so sometimes it's simple things like that. Other times it's like ways of working. Some clients are like, oh yeah, I love that, we can just ping you on Slack and like, you guys are so responsive, blah, blah. Other times it's like, yeah, it is like, hey, like love the way that you guys bring ideas to the table with design, etc. And frankly, sometimes it's like, it's stuff like, oh yeah, like, you guys have an amazing kind of, like account management, team that like just, seems to care about us a lot and like understand what we want, and it just is a pleasure to kind of talk with them every day, like etc. So like it yeah, it's super interesting, like, and I think yeah, like the main thing is, hey, like these are, all these are like different businesses at different stages with different kind of priorities, and and within that, remember, these are people in these orgs with their own, kind of incentives and priorities and kind of, things that they're trying to figure out. And so, yeah, it's really about getting to know them, kind of, asking some questions and, listening, and from there, kind of trying to, yeah, figure out what the value is. And sometimes you don't always figure it out, but I think it's worth kind of trying.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love like a lot of the theme of this conversation has been very much about like um, having a structure, but also being like flexible enough to kind of like work with your clients, because at the end of the day, like that's what you want to do. We're firm believers in the like it's all like the non-creative stuff, which is why we're talking about this. That really kind of adds value, adds a lot of value to a creative business. And so I wanted to ask about AgencyDocs. Like, how did first of all, like, what is AgencyDocs, and how did that kind of come about? And what made you kind of all decide that that's something you wanted to put out there in the world?
Yeah. I mean, so AgencyDocs was actually like, and this was like over 10 years ago. I was writing like a little blog post, for myself, being like, hey, what would be awesome is if I could just like pay money to see other people's like deliverables, templates, or whatever, like especially these other agencies that are further along, and like maybe, if I could just get a peek at like what their proposals look like, or if I can, take a look at like what their strategy deck or or their kickoff decks look like. Like I was just kind of curious. And I would ask some people too, like people that I viewed as mentors, and some would be like, "Cool, here, take a look," or others would be like, "No, like you're not gonna, yeah, I'm not gonna show you. That's ours." And so um, that got me thinking. I was like, like why don't I just put our stuff up? And because there's got to be folks like me, who, if I'm interested in this stuff, maybe there are a few people that are interested in looking at what we have. And so. Uh, and honestly, like this is at a time like it was actually just me, honestly, because like our team was just kind of really focused on the client stuff, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna give myself half a day to clean up some docs and package it up and put up on a Shopify site and call it a day. So that was like back in 2017, so this is a while ago, and like put it up, and over the years, it's made some sales. It continues to, I think sold a few this month already, and like it was just interesting. You just put it out there and like, people kind of learn about it. And yeah, I mean, we've done some other things on top of it, like email marketing, just kind of reaching out to prospects and stuff like that. But it hasn't been a real focus. Like it's something that I think, maybe later this year, say we're gonna have talked about, hey, like we should revamp all these docs. They're kind of old. Like we don't even like it was so old. Like the site maps that we have in there are in Sketch. You know what I mean? Like it's that kind of like outdated stuff. So I was like, all right, we gotta like revamp this and relaunch it, and I think we could get it to a point where it's a nice little, it can do more than it does now as a kind of side hustle, but the bigger vision for that long term is like, yeah, can we create a more valuable resource, that uh, could be helpful for especially smaller agencies, and then could that be a way for us to like connect with other agency operators who, maybe we can collaborate with them, maybe they can be they can join the Barrel Holdings family in some way, or we can recruit some kind of future leaders for our businesses. So that's kind of the vision for AgencyDocs is more of a feeder in that way.
Yeah, cool. Love that. Yeah, it's like just change that marketing copy to be like time tested agency docs. It's like just leveraging the fact that they were built that long ago. There's probably some principles in there that still hold up.
What a great example of solving for your own problems.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like also it's like one of the funniest things you said, like there are only like two answers to the question of like, can I check out like your strategy deck or your pitch deck or whatever? And it's just like a firm yes or a firm no. Like at least in my experience, it's like people are either all about it or like there's no way we're showing this to you.
Yeah, I guess like one more question I have for you, and I think like this makes this episode a little bit unique because like you do have such an interesting business and background, and then everything that you're doing. Like so, with everything that you have going on at Barrel, from Bolster to everything, like how do you stay connected to all of it? Like how do you see your role within Barrel Holdings now, as you kind of like move away from your initial days of building websites for friends to now having multiple businesses underneath you?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say a lot of it is, first and foremost, there's like the higher level stuff of like, making sure, we have kind of the vision for each of the businesses and for the holding company at large as well. So, it's just continuing to refine that vision and, figure out, okay, like what are some of the things that we need to do in terms of like, financial progress, process, talent, as well as like, the way we can grow the services or, the way that we help our clients. And so a lot of my thinking is kind of, and work is kind of done, like setting vision, I'd say, and strategy, you could call it. And then the other piece is just the daily motions of like, ensuring I can, have a network that's growing and valuable and can kind of funnel more opportunities to Barrel, and Barrel Holdings, all the Barrel Holdings entities, because yeah, like and this could be a range of things. Like it could be connecting with former clients, it could be connecting with other agency peers, because there's a lot of ways to collaborate. We can send them leads and they can send us leads. There's tech solutions partners, there's like investor types like private equity and venture capital. So it's just about continuing to build relationships in any way I can with those. So a lot of the conversations, and a lot of it is just trying to help them, so that like they can we can be top of mind for when they might need our services. And then I do think like just the ability to like continue to generate content, whether on social media or my blog and newsletter. I think that's a big component to like trying to create value for all the businesses, because that continues to give me a way to connect with others that could be sources of business later on, but also potential talent as well. And so I think thinking about it that way, it's like a high leverage activity for me, because like I can write one newsletter that can go to a lot more people, and then from there, I can connect with multiple folks. And so that, having that discipline is super important to how I spend my time.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I love that idea. And Hein, go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say, like, I think like a lot of the things that you said, like you are doing with and your personal role in this is like all the parts of, at least for me, speaking personally, like are the parts of like the business I know like we need to always put a focus on. I think like sometimes we forget that like these things, like creating the content, like creating those connections and those partnerships, like really do go a long way. And but they always kind of like are the first to kind of fall to the wayside because you can easily make an excuse and saying like I'm too busy or I'm not going to do that. But it's always kind of a nice reminder to know that that that's critically important.
Yeah, I think too on the maybe we can move into the nug section of it and go into that like social media kind of content world, because I think it's loosely tied to all parts of the business. Like you were answering it in the context, of like you have these multiple businesses. How do you sort of find ways to stay connected to all of them? But also just like as a lead funnel, or shouldn't you be making content, like, that type of thing. Do you have any thoughts on that, just from the, like, let's say the Webflow business side or the design side, like how much fruit, like has sort of been born of that? I think it's a longer play, and sometimes it feels like an optional thing, but I don't think it is. I'm curious your thoughts on that, even for a smaller agency.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, could you rephrase the question real quick? Because I think cut out a little bit.
Yeah, mostly just, the role of using social media, whether it's a blog or like how do you feel like that fits in, especially if it was, maybe just one of your businesses and not as a way to sort of, connect from that higher level of all of them, just thinking about it from, the Shopify agency, the Webflow agency level. Like, what are your thoughts on the role of using social media just as posts or blogs or whatever kind of content you think makes sense?
Yeah, I think it's shifted a lot from, because we used to invest more into like these, hey, like Beryl is going to post XYZ content about this and put it there. And like, that was, just the thing you did. But, a lot of it shifted to like, personal posts. And I think, especially on a place like LinkedIn. And so, yeah, we're very much, investing in that realm of like, I do encourage, the folks at our other agencies to like post on their personal accounts first, and then we'll just use the company ones to amplify that, because there's something about, I think, people connecting more deeply with when people post versus companies. And then secondly, like, I think it gives you the opportunity to tell more like personal stories of like, kind of like, hey, there was this problem, I overcame it, and these are lessons I learned from it. Like, there's like a kind of clear structure you can kind of adopt that, if a company does it, it's kind of weird, doesn't make sense. But if a person does it, there's like, yeah, like it gets a lot more engagement. I mean, just in general, like we like stories like that. I think as people, we just like that more. And so, yeah, I think that's more of what's the future. But like, once again, with any kind of marketing approach like that, it could easily get overdone. And once you get kind of insanely flooded and everyone's like, oh my God, my feed is it's basically these types of stories over and over again, might have to do something new, something different. And so, yeah, it's just about understanding like what is, coming through as, kind of valuable content that connects with people, and is memorable. Because at the end, like, a lot of the company content just wasn't memorable anymore, because everyone's putting out like, oh, we did this project and it looks like this, and look at us, like, we're a cool company. Like, I don't think that was resonating as much.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip, and also like just the idea of everyone being able to post personally how they interact in projects or in their role or whatever within that company, like you said, and even just doing that next bit of like, oh, the company can retweet these different voices, right, from our world. Like, everybody's smart, everybody has an interesting angle, and it's less like, is this on brand, or whatever, is this our marketing campaign?
Yeah. One bit is you know, I think you have to be intentional about who on your company you're kind of encouraging to kind of do these posts. And so I think the bigger the company, obviously, like you're going to focus on the executive team and kind of giving them the green light to post about these things. And um, I do think, but then you're setting an example as well. Like a lot of these folks, when they post these things, they're kind of modeling for others as well. So it could have a good positive impact as well.
Yeah, that last bit about the modeling is like so key and important because it's very much like a do as we do as we say, everything like that, and just like follow this. Before we kind of wrap up with like the nugs and we let you kind of like shamelessly plug whatever it is that you want, do you have any other kind of just final tips or lessons that you'd like to share that we just haven't touched on as it relates to either pricing or just running a creative business in general, and just from all the what you've seen over the last 16 years?
Yeah. I mean, I think one that I'll continue to harp on is like, you know, especially as agency operators kind of start adding team members, whether especially like full time team members, and grow the team. It's easy to get sucked into like, oh yeah, headcount. Like I got X number of people on my team or whatever. Like it just has to a big aspect of that. They have to you know like really embraces utilization, just like keeping tabs on that metric, especially because it's and I think part of where like we got into trouble at points in our history is like just not kind of being disciplined with that. And when you have a team, you want to be as fully utilized as possible as a team. Just well, first of all, understanding what the capacity of the team is, and then understanding like, hey, what is the level you need to hit to be at a certain level of profit, and then from there, if you fall below a certain level, like what are you going to do to correct that, right size it, and then make sure you're on a more solid footing. Because I've seen too many times like folks just not want to face up to that, or not keeping track of that, and then they get into trouble financially, and they end up kind of personally paying out of pocket to keep a team together for whether it's appearance sake or just kind of they feel bad about making some of these moves. And yeah, you could just really jeopardize your business that way. So I say utilization is super important, and it's like it's not sexy at all part of the business, but it's really does drive a lot of the business fundamentals.
Yeah, that's a great tip that we were trying to like better figure that out for ourselves, like what that utilization looks like. And I think that just goes such a long way to really get that clean and clear, so we know. And I think it helps with everything that you've been talking about, with like the margins and running a successful business at the end of the day, to have that all ironed out. So Peter, we can talk to you all day about all this stuff, and you probably have like so much more to share with us, but we want to be mindful of your time, and we want to show our appreciation and gratitude by moving into our can of shameless plug section here, and want to give you the floor and just open it up and let you plug whatever it is that you want to plug.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I do write a lot about like the agency business on my personal website. So it's just peterkang.com. Yeah, I have a newsletter I send out every week. And yeah, I try to be as kind of transparent as possible. Obviously, there's certain things that I'm not gonna share publicly, but at the end of the day, like it's a lot about like you're gonna have tough spots, you're gonna have challenges that you're gonna run into, and I try to share those in the hopes that like if anyone else is going through something similar, or it's something that if you're early in the game, like something for you to look out for, so that you could avoid making mistakes that I might have made. So it's in that spirit. And yeah, it's helped me too, just because I look back on a lot of my old posts and be like, all right, cool, like these are things that we've gotten better about, but these are also things that are recurring challenges that still need to be worked through. So yeah, I think that's the main plug there. And then yeah, I mean, we have Barrel Holdings, barrel-holdings.com, if anyone's interested in learning more about that.
Cool. Yeah, we'll
Cool.
definitely add a link to your website, and you'll get a couple of new subscribers after this to check that out. And I think it's always like great and appreciated that there are people like you who are trying to be as transparent about this to kind of show that it's not all glitz and glamour. There's ups and downs and all of it, and it kind of just makes the whole experience feel a lot less lonely for everyone. So just want to thank you for taking that time to do that. But with that said, that's it, everyone. Another banger dropped. We worked it, and I think it was worth it. I want to thank Peter for sharing his insights and expertise with us on MoneyMe.
Yeah, and real quickly before we go, thank you for tuning in to our little weird shows, and hopefully you're learning quite a bit from people smarter than us. That's basically the value that we can bring. But your support for the show means the world to us. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay updated on the latest conversations and all these thoughts from leaders all across the creative field. We'll be back with more content on design and pricing and agency ops, all of those types of things. So again, make sure you subscribe like right now, because you'll forget later, I promise you. So until next time, fade to black.